Hello, and welcome to Film Slam Stream's post-film conversation for Worthy. My name is Eric Siler, and I'm an instructor of film, media arts, and communications, as well as moderator for this conversation. We're very pleased to be joined by the director of Worthy, Jalmer Caceres. Jalmer is a writer, director who was born in El Salvador without a television in his home. After arriving in the U.S. at the age of 5, he fell in love with movies and American television and had countless hours of unsupervised viewing. However, he went on to become the first in his family to graduate from college and recently attained his MFA from the American Film Institute. So, hello, Hamir, and welcome.
Hi, Eric. Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
It's great to have you here, and I must say, well, what a delight to see a film being made with animals and children as well. You kind of like it's a challenge to do that, or wasn't it a challenge to do a film like this?
It definitely is a challenge, not just because everyone is young and the animals kind of have a mind of their own, even though they're trained actors, all the animals were trained for the screen. It's still an incredible challenge. There are time limitations and certain restrictions, and we have to get school hours in while we're still on set and things of that nature that we have to constantly account for in order to make sure we make our days. And so all of that was quite a bit, but definitely well worth it because I thought everyone had a wonderful experience, and I still talk to all of the actors and I'm still in touch with them, and it's been very wonderful for all of us. It was a great experience.
I understand the inspiration from this film came out of interaction you had as a young child. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. So I moved around a lot when I was very little. I actually went to 10 schools before I was out of high school. So as a kid, I kind of moved around a lot. And one time I ended up in this neighborhood when I was about 10 years old. And I lived there for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years. And across the street, lived this guy that used to fight dogs. And as scary as that sounds, it was kind of like normal in that neighborhood. And my best friend Amir, who I put in the film, he used to run over to my door and knock on my door, and he would be like, "Oh my God, the dogs are fighting. Do you want to go see?" And as a little 10-year-old, we would sneak over and just kind of peek over the fence, and we would watch in awe, and these dog fights happen. And then after living there for a while, someone actually abandoned this little puppy pit bull in my neighborhood. I remember I was on the block by myself, and this little tiny dog came up to me and was really friendly. And I was petting him and I was looking around, and I realized someone had dropped him off and had taken off in their car. And so I went home and I begged my mom to let me keep him and let me keep him and let me keep him. And finally she agreed. And I knew it was a point of pride, even then, having a little pit bull in this neighborhood. And so I used to walk it around my block quite frequently. And then one day, the dog fighter saw me, and he saw me with this little pit bull, and he called me over across the street. And it kind of plays out the way it does in the movie, where he kind of at first was hinting at like, "Do you want to fight your dog?" And I was so freaked out and so scared, and I was like, "No, my puppy's so little, and I don't know how." And I was really scared, but in the end, he kind of convinced me to face off the dogs, and that's kind of the climax in the film, where these dogs kind of face off, and you take off running, and I took off running, excuse me. And the funny thing is that a few days after my dog got loose, and I remember someone knocked on my door and said, "Hey, your dog is loose and it's on the street." And I went, and it was normal. From time to time he would get out, but of course, I'd go outside and bring him back in. And this one particular time, after this incident had happened, I went outside, and I saw him down the street, and I started walking towards him, calling his name, and he started to run away from me. And it kind of really shocked me, but I chased him and chased him and chased him. And again, it kind of plays out the way it did in the film. I remember I ran and ran, and I screamed his name at the top of my lungs, and he stopped and he turned around and we were looking at each other for what felt like forever. But he turned around and he kept going and he ran away and he never came back. And I remember I went home and I was in tears and I was crying and I was telling my mom, he ran away, he ran away. And she was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, the dog, you ran away. And she was like, why? And I told her, I said, it's because mom, I broke his trust. I let the monster be in front of him and he ran away. And I remember it still makes me emotional right now thinking about it, but he never came back. And so that's the story of Worthy. Uh,
Oh, wow. Interesting. Interesting. Um, wow. So the actual dogs you used in there, tell us a little bit about that. They were trained dogs, I take it.
Correct. I found so I was looking. It was a world of pit bulls, and I almost did it, but one of them had to be switched to a German Shepherd. But I looked around for companies because there are companies that have dogs that are trained, for the camera. And I found this really lovely company that had this little pit bull that kind of just reminded me of my dog, and so I got them involved, and they were the ones that brought along also the German Shepherd, and they were the ones that helped me contact the person that had Bishop, because Bishop was a different handler. But that dog was amazing to find because the moment I saw a picture of him, I was like, that's him. That's him. And like, and I'd love to have him. And so my producers worked really, really hard to work that out, and we got into conversations with them, and after a long kind of process of conversation, I explained to them how safe we were going to be and how everything was going to be done, in an incredibly professional manner, and how safety came first for all of us, for everyone, for the actors involved, for the filmmakers involved. And so everyone kind of agreed that they wanted to help make this film, and everyone understood that even though we were living in this world where this dog fighter existed, we still wanted to bring a positive message out. And that's the key, is that we wanted to share that at the end of this story, this kid still learns something, right? Learns to care for something, learns about the responsibility of caring for something. And so everyone kind of came on board, and then it worked out really nicely.
How many days of filming did this take?
We had 3 days, 3 days of filming, and it was limited hours because when you're working with children, it all depends on their age. So we were working with very kind of like a very limited schedule, but we found a way to make it work, because kids still have to go to school if they're on set. So if you're a kid actor and you're on set, you require a certain amount of break time and a certain amount of study hours, and you have to have a teacher on set. And so we made sure that we balanced all of that out. So it was a total of 3 days, but with very limited hours. And so we would always find the best pockets of time on how to work it out, how to work the shoot out.
Hmm. And so tell me a little bit about your actors. How did you find your actors, and what was the process like of casting them? Because you had to find actors that were comfortable with working with dogs.
Yeah, it was interesting. I had a wonderful casting director that kind of, that threw a net out there in Los Angeles because that's where we filmed. And of course, it's a melting pot of actors in LA. And so we went through several rounds of finding different kids. I think it's an initial pool of kids that they find. And then from there, the casting director will actually pick, maybe a couple handful of kids, maybe like 10 kids that they think have the potential for the role. And then that's kind of when they bring me in, and we slowly start to find the ones that really stand out the most, or more so that feel like the character. And they get a bit of the script to read. A lot of this was done on Zoom, so we didn't do the casting in person. We did it over Zoom. First it was recordings, of them doing the audition, and then eventually when I got involved, we had actual live Zoom back and forths and readings and so forth, and slowly it started to we started to find the couple kids, and I thought they were great. They were really spot on, to be honest with you, and they were incredibly well trained. They were both well trained and very professional. They both understood, the work it was going to take, and I think for the star, his name's Liam Martinez. For him, it was interesting because I he didn't have a pet. But when I started conversations with him, I said, "Have you been around pets? Have you?" And he said, "Oh yeah, my family members have dogs, and I play with them all the time." And so I knew that he was comfortable enough. And then once he got on set, we were able to have him and the dog kind of spend a little time together before we even started kind of rolling, and slowly we saw them build the trust, and so that's how kind of we brought it along. But by day three, he was incredibly comfortable, and was just working as fast as he could because we were running out of time, and he was doing an incredible job. So yeah, that's how that went.
Well, that's great how everything came together, and especially in a matter of just 3 days. So, Worthy, is that the name? Is that what you named your dog when you were a child, or is that a name from somewhere else?
Yeah, Worthy was the name of a pit bull, of the pit bull. And it's funny, it's just ironic that it kind of worked out that way, because I thought it was so full of symbolism now as an adult looking back on it. And kid, that's kind of like what echoes throughout the film. You kind of see him grow up a little bit, right before our eyes, and I thought all of that symbolism just was so perfect, with the dog's name, that the moment I think I started thinking of trying to make the film, I was like, clearly the movie should be called Worthy, and it just worked out that way. But yeah, that was the name of the dog.
Mhm. Do you have a dog now, and did you ever get a dog after your dog ran away when you were a child?
Yeah, I've had other dogs after. I don't have a dog now. And I've thought about it for a long time, but I'm so busy at the moment that I feel like I wouldn't have the time to do the right thing, which is walk them all the time, make sure they get out. They have a ton, especially something like a pit bull, they have a ton of energy to burn. But I have a brother, he has pit bulls, loves them to death. Whenever I see them, I walk them. I kind of play around with them, and they're very sweet dogs. So that relationship with pit bulls still exists to this day. And I normally, if I see someone or talk to someone and we have a conversation about those kind of dogs, which can tend to have a negative reputation, I tell them it's actually quite the opposite. They're actually incredibly loving dogs, and it all depends on the owner and how they raise those animals, but they're incredibly loyal and very sweet, very smart, and protective. They can be very protective, but they're wonderful to be around. And now in LA, there's a booming of like pets. Everyone has like a pet, and I see pit bulls all the time. It makes me happy because I'm like, good, they no longer have that reputation where it feels negative. Like everyone, I feel like is starting to understand how beautiful these dogs are.
Yes, they are. I'm familiar with those dogs, and they are can be
Yeah.
very lovely. So tell me about what do you want? Did you want people to get out of watching this film? What message should someone take away from watching it?
Well, I think that definitely what I wanted was, for people to kind of see how this kid started off, um, not really understanding the responsibility of what it is to kind of care for his dog, and the emotional journey of the character is that, at the beginning his dad leaves, and so he wasn't cared for in a way, to a certain degree, and so it's reflected on the way he's kind of not taking care of his dog, and that's the lesson that he learns at the end. He learns, that to care for something is more than just kind of the responsibilities that you have for it, but it's actually the care that you have to give to these animals or to another person. And I feel like that was his journey. I felt like for me, it was about a kid who was walking around in his world feeling a sense of abandonment to some degree, because his father leaves at the beginning of the film. And so again, it's reflected with the way, even though he's around his dog is kind of going a little wild and tearing up the yard. And his mom is saying, I don't think you understand, I think you're too young to really kind of care for this dog. And he's insisting that he can do it. And in the end, really, I think opens up his mind when this incident happens with the dog fighter. I think he really learns that it's more about just kind of walking the dog and cleaning up after it. It's that you have to care for it, and I think he breaks through, and I think he has that emotional arc that was important to me, for this kid to kind of break through and really learn again that it's more than just the physical responsibilities, but the love and the care that you have to show these little creatures. So that's what I hope people take from it
Yeah, that's a
is
good.
both, and that you're also, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good message to send and to tell in a film, through a film like this. Now, tell me, I know this is based on your childhood experience, did your mother want you to get rid of the dog, or is that something you added into this film?
I know it happened. When the dog would get out, and he would tear up somehow this guy would get into the trash bins and would tear up everything in there. And my mom would wake me up early in the morning because my mom never, always forced me to have the responsibility, which was a good thing. It taught me a lot as a little kid. But she would wake me up and she would be like, "You got to go see the yard. Look at what your dog did." And I would get up. And I would be like, Jesus, why, Worthy, and I'd clean up after the dog and put everything away. And so that was an experience where on multiple times she was like, I don't think you can have a dog yet. I knew you weren't ready for it. We should get rid of it. But of course, you're 10 years old, so you kick and scream and you're like, no, please, and you beg and she let me keep the dog for as long as I did.
Mm. Oh, great. That's really good to know that she let you keep the dog. And how long did you have the dog before he ran away?
I think that happened. It had to have been maybe, I want to say a few months, but maybe, I don't know if close to a year, but maybe less. I know definitely less than a year. Because it happened, in real life, what happened was I walked the dog and I walked the dog early on when I first got him, and the dog fighter saw me. And the first time he saw me, he called me over. He was like, "Hey kid, come here." And I remember I walked across the street because I was like, oh, he just wants to look at my dog. And sure enough, when I approached him, I remember the first thing he did was manhandle my dog. He kind of grabbed him, and it was a puppy. So he kind of grabbed him and he looked at his face and he kind of, sat him down and really kind of worked my dog. And then he was like, is this, where'd you get this dog? And I was like, oh, I found him. And he was like, you found him? I said, yeah, I found him. And the first time he asked me, he goes, so are we going to fight our dogs? He kind of said it playfully. I really got spooked. And I was like, no, it's a puppy. Like, it's so tiny. And I remember the first thing he said was like, okay, so in a couple of months, we'll fight them. And I remember that's how I got away the first time. And so I know a couple of months at least went by before the second time he saw me. And the second time he saw me is when we ended up facing the dogs off. So I remember I had that dog. I had to have had him for a few months, but I'll never forget. I mean, I still to this day, I don't know how it was. And I really do feel it was that moment because it's the first time I saw him be aggressive too. That puppy, the first time he was aggressive was that one time that we put those dogs face to face. I remember his hair stood up in the back of his neck when I was holding him, and he was really upset that this other man was touching him, and he kind of growled for the first time, and it scared me. And so he never came back. I never understood that. But to this day, I'm like, man, I really, really messed up. staying there because I really feel like I broke his trust because he ran away and he looked right at me and he just kept running. So to answer your question, a few months, at least a few months with my dog.
Yeah, well, this film serves as gives a strong message. It's also, I guess, pretty personally like a coping mechanism as well too for that experience as a child. Um, so real quick before we wrap up, what has the response been like from the viewers of this film? What have people said to you?
Um, it's been really positive because like I think they are receiving the positive message. So I love that they get that they receive the positive message. And then in the end they tell me that they think it's a very sweet film, and I really like that. I wanted it to be that way. I wanted it to be about a childhood, and regardless of how rough the neighborhood or how rough the situation, it's still a beautiful childhood because I think kids are magical that way. They find a way for no matter where they are, or for things to feel adventurous and grand and spectacular, and for me, I was, I always look back, and even now I'm like, those are some of my fondest memories because no matter how rough, they felt like an adventure, and I'm such a movie kid that they feel like movies in my head, and now I get to make them, and I've been able to make a few in the short film format and share them with the world. And so the response has been good. We've gone to a few festivals, a few big festivals, and I'm really glad that the movie continues to be shared. And I'm part of a youth cinema program here in California and Los Angeles as well, where we mentor kids how to make films. And we literally teach them to write a short film, and then we actually shoot the films themselves. And I love sharing these stories with them because I think they really see how it is that you can take something personal and mold it, and shape it, and how it really is, a movie that can come out of it. So I love sharing it that way. And I'm so glad that you guys shared it with students. Honestly, it's a high point for me. I'm like, I love that kids are gonna watch it and see it, and hopefully they feel how adventurous, childhood is, no matter what, and so I'm really happy you guys share it.
Well, it was our pleasure to share this film. The last question is, what's next for you? What do you plan to do next? And also, are there any plans to create a sequel for this?
Well, it's funny because I wrote the short film. It's a proof of concept for a feature that I've been working on for a while. And the feature, um, is also kind of a reflection of my youth. Not so much in my younger years, the way the film is now, because I wanted it to be an independent short that just lived on its own, but at the same time that it kind of reflected the world of the feature. And so I do have a feature that I'm working on that I think my plan is for it to be my second feature. I have a first feature right now that I'm working on, and I'm actually in Central America right now. I'm in El Salvador, and it's my second time visiting the country since I was a kid. And I'm currently here, kind of planting the seeds on the feature that I want to shoot. A large part of it takes place here, raised in the US, that comes back and kind of finds the roots of where he came from, and the wonderful people that knew him as a very young little kid, and the experience he has while he's out here, which has happened to me now a couple of times that I visited the country. And so I want to start off with that. But in my head, I've always seen Worthy as my second feature film because it feels like a bigger movie, and I definitely want to make it as big as possible. But yeah, that's the plan for that.
Well, I wish you all the luck and all the best with making that happen. I can't wait to see what comes about. Jalmer Caceres, Director of Worthy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. And again, thank you for sharing my film. I appreciate I appreciate that you guys put it out there and the program that you guys have and you know and hope I hope that it serves to share it again. Make your childhood movies, tell your childhood stories because there's magic in them. So I can't wait to see you know other people's films and hopefully you guys inspire. That's what we all hope for, right? To inspire.
Absolutely, absolutely. And thank you to our viewers for joining us for this important and invigorating conversation. For more information about our upcoming events, please visit us at clevelandfilm.org. I'm Eric Siler. Thank you.